Everything's opened up.
Yeah, I don't see him on the attendee side.
Yeah.
Let's see if he pops in a few minutes. Meeting called to order. Today is Tuesday, March 9th. It is now 6:05 PM. Town council meeting via Zoom to discuss road maintenance.
Councilman Lattradi,
Here.
Councilman Messier,
Here.
Councilwoman Williamson.
Here.
Council Vice President D'Amico,
Here.
Council President Goslin. There's a
Here.
quorum on record.
Mark, if you want to do a debrief, and we'll see if Don shows up.
Sure. So I think ultimately tonight's goal is to determine the amount of funds that we want to seek to put the bond. And I think obviously we need to go about that by prioritizing the streets that are listed. Maybe by you folks, you want to do it, whether it's by need or a combination of need and ward, but Don will expand upon that. But both on a list of roads that need to be redone, but also a sub-secondary list on roads that can be rehabilitated. Because as I mentioned, I'd like to put aside some of the money for preventative maintenance. We've never truly budgeted for it. And since this is a tight fiscal year, we'd like to build in a little bit of the bond money for preventative maintenance. So maybe some of those roads that may pop up in a couple of years, we can stretch those out to a next big bond time instead of, have them deteriorate to the point where they're as bad as the ones that'll make the top of today's list. Don had a couple key points that I thought were good one that he was prepared to lay out to you folks on, the mileage via ward, some of the needs by each ward, because just doing a flat equitable dollar amount probably won't make the most sense, because all the roads in each ward are differently. In the south end of town, there's significantly more mileage of roads than in the north end of town or in central part of town. Obviously, the center of town is the oldest part, and there's a lot of cobblestones underneath. So the construction things are different of each area. But I see Don here, so I'll let him run with his presentation.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Don.
Okay. We got as much done as we possibly could. I sent out a spreadsheet that lists every road and every repair and what the estimate is. We broke it down into wards, but again, a lot of these roads go into different wards. So we did not get to a point where we actually split it, that it's Ward 3 and Ward 4. But that's something we can do on some of the larger roads as we get a little bit more time. We still got, if you look at that spreadsheet and you look at the end, you'll see about 20 roads that have to be found or identified. Like there's a couple of state roads in there. There's probably a couple of paper roads in there. And we're trying to just verify all of that. Freddie actually finished up his last of the hill section today about 2 o'clock, and Tracy plugged them in before she left. And we basically haven't had a chance to sit down and say, in Ward 1, these are the worst roads. In Ward 2, these are the worst roads. That is going to happen tomorrow or the next day. And so I'm not prepared to give you a blow by blow what road is going to be done. but I can probably get that to you by Friday. There were some clear ones. Turner Road I believe it's Ward 5 is awful. I mean, really bad. The Tanglewood neighborhood, that entire neighborhood could be done over. But I think it'll be too costly. So maybe Tanglewood and maybe one other side is a Deer Wanderer or something. I can't remember the exact names, but there's another street over there. Maybe we can do 2 of them and then move on. I sent you another kind of memo that I was trying to put together, and again, with the intent of putting down what roads I think ought to be targeted. And we're not ready to do that. But I thought the process that I laid out is pretty well thought out. But again, it's something that you as a board need to consider and see if you want to tweak it. And if you don't mind, I'm going to read it real quick so everybody's on the same page. I wrote down the recommended process. The town has 4 major thoroughfares: New London Avenue, Main Street, New London Turnpike, Wakefield Street. Sorry, somebody came in, scared me. These roads should not be considered a ward roadway because they're used by nearly all the town's population. Whatever the cost of these road improvements for these 4 roads should come off the top of the bond bill. So if you've got 5 million and then the total to repair those roads is 1 million, you take that 1 million, do those roads, and then divvy up the other 4 million. Each ward should have 100,000 dedicated to crack sealing or cape seal. The DPW will do as much full depth patch as possible. However, some will have to get contracted out. What is left should be allotted to each ward by need and road mileage. Roads that are on the state or on a schedule to be repaired, i.e. water department, will not be touched. For example, Coit Avenue is definitely on the agenda for Kent County Water. So it wouldn't make any sense for us to pave that than have Kent County come in and put a water main in. It's that simple. And I will tell you, because I did an awful lot of the surveys, Ward 5 was by far the worst. Ward 1 was by far the best. Ward 1, with the one exception of that one neighborhood, is in pretty decent shape. The other 3 wards are in between. I have a vendor coming tomorrow, a guy named Art Baker. And Art works for a company, used to be called Seal Coating Inc. And they are probably the biggest in New England for crack sealing, chip seal, and cape seal, and all of these other products. I'm bringing him in just to have him look at a couple of roads. For example, Pulaski Street, I think, is a good candidate for a cape seal, but I want him to turn around and take a look at it. If it's too far gone, then we'll have to do something different. If it's a good candidate, then that is about a $6 a square yard cost versus about a $15 a square yard for reclaiming. So I want to try to get Pulaski Street done, that being a major thoroughfare in those 2 wards. I've got another company coming next Tuesday to talk about what's called hot in place mill asphalt recycling. And it's an amazing product. What they do is they go down the street and they actually mill off 2 inches of the asphalt, reheat it, put more emulsifier in it, put it right back down on the road. It doesn't leave the town, recompact it, and they've had really good luck with that. And I plan on looking at a couple of job sites where they've done this 10 years ago to look at the condition of the roads. That is about half to 60% the cost of reclamation. So my thought process is, if it works on New London Turnpike, for example, where the road base is still in good shape. It's just the road surface is in horrible condition. This right here may be a way of cutting the cost of doing New London Turnpike. That's pretty much all I've got. I would like to get your input on the roads that you guys think ought to be looked at in your ward. And I also need to have some kind of an idea what your budget number is. Is it going to be 5 million? Is it going to be 7 million? I obviously recommend the more because you do have such a large need for it. And other than that, I mean, I'm here to answer any questions, but
All right, who wants to start?
I'll start.
I have some questions.
Do you mind if I
I'm
start?
sure we
Jason?
all do.
Well,
It
I just
doesn't-
wanted to
if you wanna
say,
go
Okay, hold
down,
on, guys, hold on. Jay, I know it's hard because you're on the phone. I want to start off, I'll go down the list. We'll go with Ward 5, John.
so, I have a bunch of different opinions just to put out there. So first of all, I am not adverse to, doing this as a town and putting the money where the need is. I do believe that we have some of the worst roads in Ward 5. It's a tongue twister. And I sent the list to both Mark and Don. Lunsdale is my priority. I would want that whole thing done from top to bottom. There's also an inlet that needs to get done. And several of the streets that run off of Cohasset, those are in terrible shape. I think they should be redone. Some of the ones that are off in the back near Quaker. Don mentioned Turner. There's like 4 or 5 surrounding streets, Michael, Campbell, Claire. I mean, I sent them the list, but they're priorities. But I also believe that in some cases, there might only be sections that need to get done. So for example, Sycamore, Shady Hill for me, they could look at it and probably do, 100 yards here and 100 yards there. Same thing where National Grid came in and did all those streets behind Dunkin' Donuts. There's a little patch on Monterey. It's 100 yards, but it should get done. So again, I would not be adverse to a team saying, well, we've gone through, whether it's DPW, fire department, police department, people from these departments who drive these roads as well as the council to say, look, this is where the money will best be spent based on, say, dire need. It'd be nice to have a chunk of money and do it the way they did it in the past, but I really think, and I think Mary Beth said this originally, you focus on it as a town.
Thank you, John. Jay?
Hi, sorry, I should yell at one of my kids. I have some questions on here. John, I go through some of Ward 5, and I do agree that I think that the roads are in really, really bad shape. When I was waiting for Don to do this, I kind of started with anticipating we have $5 million to work with. And when Don had said that the 4 main thoroughfares should get done, I'm looking at what is the number to complete those. So if it were, say, 2 million, there's $3 million remaining. I do think that each ward should get a certain amount to work with for us to decide as councilors, because it's all going to fall on us. Why did road 1 get done and not road 2? And I mean, John, you and I have got that you more than me. How come Ward 4 is getting roads done and Ward 5 isn't? And people just don't understand the whole process. But if we can have control out of something, say, I'm just going to throw out round numbers. If there was, say, 3 million left, and we all had, again, say $400,000 to work with, the remainder would go to the worst roads. And this is something I'm throwing out there. I think the key is to find out what those 4 main thoroughfares are what the number is. And not to be selfish, I do have money left. I have $140,000 left, and I was going to go by these numbers in my ward and just start taking the 140 and peeling off whether it's going to be a cap seal or a reclaiming or whatever. So I'm going to have a lot of my ward done. The water company is going to do Coit Avenue, and Manchester Street and Hepburn, which are my three worst roads actually. And I plan on hoping to start that this spring so it can catapult we can do this. This is what we're doing. Please vote for the road bond. And I do have CDBG money. So I'd be inclined to actually have Ward 5, if they're the worst roads, maybe get more than anybody. But I mean, this is all up in the air. We don't have a base number to work off of.
Thank you, Jay. Jay Messier?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Jay. I think that which roads need to be done. I mean, in different wards, it's not going to be the same amount. So I do like if there's a certain amount of money that's kind of in the middle, and then we decide together. I know that when I came into office, I think I had whatever money I had. It was around $1 million. It was all going to the Shippey Ave drainage project. So I know that there's definitely a lot of streets that need to be done. But like I know, like Jason and John said, Ward 5 has a lot, and Ward 1 has a lot that don't need to be done. So I mean, I think as a council, we could set some aside for each ward, but I think there definitely has to be some that we as a council can say, all right, well, this particular road needs to be done on a case by case basis. And is 5 million the number that we're going to move forward with, or we're deciding that tonight? David?
We haven't come up with a dollar amount whatsoever, so.
Yeah. I mean, I think that sounds like a decent number. I mean, is it something where we think we need to do more? Then that's, I mean, I know last time, and correct me if I'm wrong, with the previous road bond, was that part of a grant? I know that was before I was here, David. Or was that the same situation where you
Same
guys?
situation. It was a bond, and it was, I think, a 20-year bond.
Yeah.
$5 million.
So yeah, I mean, that's my thoughts. I don't have a problem with us later on as a council deciding which roads need to be done. But there should be some set aside. I don't know what amount. I don't know if 400,000 is the magic number, but there should be some amount set for each ward, and then definitely some that we can decide together. Because it does kind of stink later on when, you know, like I said, like I came in the Shippey Ave drainage project, which was important to do, but it kind of left me hamstrung where there was other projects other streets that definitely needed to be done that weren't able to be done. So that's all I got.
Mary Beth?
So I think you guys all know, and John mentioned it, I think we should look at it as a town. As you can see by the listing that Don has provided, to break it up evenly makes no sense, because the linear footage is associated with each ward is not the same. The number of roads and the absolute number is not the same. So that doesn't make much sense to me. I guess I would attack it the opposite way and say, let's do what we can for the town, figure out what we have to do, and if there's something less, then decide how it gets divvied up. And I'm not so sure it would be, if all of Ward 1 got done with divvying it up, then I don't need any extra money. So I think that's the second part. I don't think you decide what the dollar amount is first to give people. Don, I don't know if you're aware, but we actually have 500,000 in CDBG money for that Tanglewood area also. So that came through. So that obviously helps a great deal. So I agree. I guess Kristen is the one that we have to talk to about what we think we can afford or not afford. I know she sent us some numbers earlier, and what the cost was for that last, and I believe it was a 20-year bond. We talked originally maybe about it was a 10-year bond, but I think it wasn't. It is
20.
A 20-year bond.
Yep.
Yes. So I think we need to hear
the 5
from her.
million or the 7 million were both affordable.
Well, then that's an easy call. Then the answer is 7 million, because
Yeah.
there's plenty of work to be done. If indeed we can afford 7 million, I would suggest that we charge people putting the application together to go with 7 million.
And I proposed
I
7
agree.
million so we could build in some preventative maintenance money into it. So
Correct,
that was
correct.
why I
And the
threw
only
that
other,
number up.
no, I agree. The only other issue I have is, Don, you said you have somebody coming in. I'm a little concerned about that. I assume he's coming in to give you some advice, but that doesn't mean he gets the job, kind of thing. I think we have to be careful as far as that goes. I'm not sure if you're telling us or what you're saying is that's a proprietary type operation, but that concerns me a little bit because we will have to go through some sort of bidding process once we get there. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, absolutely. These are two guys that I know from, I was a board member of the Massachusetts Highway Association, and these are two board members that I know from that. Both
Okay.
of you guys have been DPW directors, one in Shrewsbury, one in Greenfield, Mass. They both have an incredible amount of experience, and they're not going to lead me wrong. And I know this stuff pretty good, but it's always better to have someone else say, nah, this is really, you can get by with Cape Seal. I will tell you, I'm not I'm not an expert on Cape Seal or chip seal or, those items. Crack sealing, unfortunately, I know it inside out, but Art will give me a good, honest answer. And then we still go out to bid. That's not and they both know that.
It's something that I've been thinking about, and I don't know how one would do this necessarily. There's so much work to do in town. My gut feeling is that, yeah, we go out to bid, but we don't necessarily award the entire amount to one company. Let 2 or 3 companies be working at the same time in different spots across the town to get things done more readily. It would be my first blush, and there may be reasons not to do that. But again, the more we can get done more quickly, I think makes sense. I don't know what Cape Seal is, so Don, you'll have to educate me as far as that goes. Maybe at some point you can send us a link to show us so we can look at a video or whatever to see what the process is. Same thing with the other gentleman you say you have coming. It almost sounds like a large scale hot box to me.
In a way it is, but it actually.
That other process.
It mills the road up into, it's like.
Yeah.
When you do a mill and overlay, you basically mill it, but then you truck all the millings away, and then you bring hot mix in.
Yep.
Well, this one, you mill it, but it goes right into a hot box, gets mixed with more emulsifier, and then gets put back down right in place. So there's no trucking at all. Then you come back and you do a quick Cape Seal or even just a chip seal over the top of it. And supposedly that lasts 12 to 15 years, which when you start looking at the numbers, that's pretty decent.
If that process can work, and it sounds like it could save us a decent amount of money, that makes sense to me. As long as we're not bound by, how many companies do that? Is there one company that does it, or?
No, there are several.
Okay.
Same with cracks.
Yeah. I mean, that makes perfect sense if we have alternatives. And as I said, if you could provide some sort of links or tell us where to go, or tell me where. I better be careful saying that. Tell me where I can find.
On the 25th, they're actually having a webinar on crack sealing, chip sealing, and Cape Seal, etc. If you'd like, I can send you the link. It's free. If you want to turn around and educate yourself, that might be the best way to do it.
Okay, that would be great. But I agree with the concept that we are a town. As a town, we have to look at all roads. I've heard Don say that the roads in Ward 1 are in better shape, so I would assume that I wouldn't need as much money. And I think that's the way we should take a look at it. To have a little bit of money, I'm not sure. I guess I don't know what that number is. I think we should worry about the maintenance, whatever that budget is and what we need for that. And I assume crack ceiling falls into maintenance, not into, the other one. So figure out what that is, assuming roughly that's a couple $1 million and the rest is 5 million. Address, clearly this report says that Ward 5 is in the worst shape. There's no doubt about that. So address what we need to there and then look at the rest of the town and figure out how we need to do it. Again, it may be that there's very little left over to divvy up amongst ourselves, but at the end of the day, if the town's in better shape overall, that's the right answer. So, Kristen, I do have a question, and I think it might be for you. I think I might have a little money left over from the last bond, somewhere in the 30,000.
I actually just very little. Trying to think. I just looked at it yesterday, actually.
Okay.
It's a total.
Told me 30.
Was it 30?
Somebody thinks that it's 30,000 or 34 or something like that.
Yeah.
Somebody told me, but I've never seen it. I really don't know.
I don't have my files
Okay.
in front of me,
Okay.
but I can email you tomorrow with the exact number.
Not
So-
much, though. It wouldn't get you much. That's like maybe
No,
50 feet, 60 feet.
no, I know it wouldn't, but maybe there's somebody, it can be, I don't know. Certainly, and are there rules around that needing to be spent before we actually go again?
No, because we closed out that bond and moved that money into capital reserve, so it's
And
there for.
I just wanted to hear you say that. So yes, I do remember that we did that. That's
I do have one question for Don. This application for the road and bridge for RIB is due a week from tomorrow, and the road list needs to be uploaded as part of the electronic application. So will you have this done by at least a week from today?
I
The
will.
road. Huh?
I will.
Okay.
So actually, does the application have to have the exact roads or the list that Don's given us? I think if I did a quick, I totaled it, it's almost $11 million. Do we have to decide which of those roads is going to receive money, or just that, hey, we have this amount of money that we need to spend and we're only asking for 7?
I know that there was an Excel spreadsheet that I got to that point and it said download this, fill it in, and then upload it. So I was going to send that to Don. I've never done that part of it. Whenever I did this road and bridge money, I filled out all the financial part. The DPW director filled out his part, and then it got submitted. So I've never even seen a road priority list. So I'm not sure. I'm hoping that Don has done this before, has done the road priority list, and he knows how to submit it.
You do have latitude to amend your list from your initial list if certain things happen. So for example, I've been through this twice now. The initial list just needs to be updated, and then if there are changes to be made, a list goes back to the state with the amended streets on it and the reasons why. So it could be a lot of different reasons. One of them being if Kent County Water Authority happens to do a street that was on the priority list, it doesn't have to be done twice, obviously. So you can take that money and utilize it for a different street.
So priority is, and Tim, I don't know if you've had the benefit of looking at the spreadsheet that Don sent us. So that wouldn't suffice? I mean, that has, like I said, $11 million worth of road work that needs to be done.
But if you took, for example, say, just using Coit Avenue as an example, Coit Avenue, the London Turnpike, Lonsdale, and Pulaski Street, let's say they cost $11 million, and that's going to be it. And that's what the town agrees upon. If something should happen in the future, whereby Kent County Water Authority is going to redo Coit Avenue, Coit Avenue's expense is $3 million. Now you can notify the people that you need to notify that the $3 million that was originally earmarked for Coit is going to be utilized differently. So you do have a little bit of power. You're not locked into what your original list is.
So again, yeah, I hear what you're saying. My question is, will this list, knowing it's more than we're asking for, suffice, or does it have to be more? Do you have to trim $4 million from it?
I think that if you're talking about an $11 million potential expenditure versus a $7 million bond, you'd be better off to trim it. Anything dealing with the state, you don't want to see $4 million out there that you're not providing any explanation as to where the revenue is going to come. So you might be better off trimming that up to get an exact amount or as closest to the bond as you can, just to avert questions and issues that may come up in the future.
So,
So going,
go ahead.
sorry. It's
That's
tough
okay.
when you can't see.
No, that's okay.
So going forward, and I don't mind doing a lot of the legwork on if I took my area Ward 4, if I have 140 in road bond, would I be safe to deduct $140,000 worth of expenses, worth of roads? And that would be given, Don say, you know what, I'd like to do these with this 140, don't put this in the bond. Is that going to help?
The
Or
140
am I
is
wasting
not,
my time?
the 140 is not in the bond. The 140 is what's left over from the last time, the bond, which means that if it's already in a capital improvement account,
Right.
that could be utilized for any street or road or any other capital project. You don't have to deduct
Right.
it off what's
But it
coming
will-
in the future.
So I
But
know.
what I'm saying is, if we're going to be submitting like this list, if I have all my roads in Ward 4, and I say, you know what, we can do this with the money, utilize the money we have now.
Yes.
That road, though, I have many roads that I could actually not submit.
Jay,
Do you know what I'm saying?
the answer to your question is yes. If you gave Don a list of roads that you can, off his estimates.
Off his price sheet.
Yes, off his pricing sheet. I mean, I wouldn't go right to 140 to a T, but I would
No.
definitely,
No,
you do 130,000, say, Don, these are the roads that we can do with the existing remaining bond money from the last time, although it's not bond money now, it's
Right.
another fund.
Oh, Right.
And so he can not put that on his list, and then he can maybe put other streets on his
If
list.
there's an alternate source of revenues for streets and roads, whether it's CDBG, capital accounts, capital improvements, something from the bond money, that should be identified and kept in its own little area of the world to
Okay.
do the streets that aren't going to be part of this newest bond for $7 million.
Okay.
Would it be permissible to look at the list and whoever has those small pots of money that are out there now is to dump that into the preventative maintenance category and chip away a handful of streets that are in your preventative maintenance
You're not prohibited from doing that, no.
and
Okay.
save the big money for those total reclaim or mill overlay jobs? Because maybe we can just get that stuff done. If the money exists, we don't have to wait for the bonding to happen. We can do bids and get
Right.
maintenance done now. If you have the
My
money.
only concern too is when we do some of these roads and identify some of the roads, and I'll take I'll use John for an example in Ward 5. If you have Campbell and Turner and Greenbush, they're all, and I think there's one other one, Michael, they're all close together and they're all long. So if you do Campbell and Turner and not Michael, or of any combination,
Right.
all you're going to catch is grief.
You have to
I
do
mean,
that whole
I
neighborhood.
personally, when I do mine, when I look at mine, I'm going to put them in pockets of the map. Like I'm not going to do 1 out of 3. If I'm going to do one section, I'm going to do the whole section. So people that I don't do a section of, let the whole section of town get pissed with me. So I know where it's coming from.
Councilman, I think the council president can inform you of his past dealings. Everybody in town gets upset. Even the people whose roads are getting done because maintenance is it's being repaired, that's an inconvenience for them. So you can't win one way or the other, no matter how you disperse the money, how equally you disperse it, how fairly you disperse it. It just doesn't work out that way because somebody's always not going to get their road done and they're always going to be upset.
Well, the easiest solution is going to be, especially with all of us, if Ward 5 gets more money, hey, John D'Amico took it all. I don't know how. You got to call him.
That's the
Uh-huh.
Peter Kelsey rule. That's the Peter
I'm
Kelsey rule.
teasing. I do have
Jay-
one more question though.
Jason, can
I'm
I
looking at some of the-
respond to you for 1 minute, Jay? Because
Sure.
I hear what you're saying. I was thinking about like that area in around Turner, Campbell, those, what's the other one there? Claire. It would make sense to do the whole area, but I think if someone from DPW or whoever went there to assess it would absolutely see that it was probably all paved at the same time, all part of the same development, and that those roads have aged the same. So they probably
Yeah.
wouldn't cut little sections out. I'm assuming, they would do the right thing and do that whole
Yeah,
area.
do the whole thing. So when we had roads done, I'm speaking from mine because that's what I know. For example, Tampa Street was done by the water company was in charge of doing that. I want to say that happened in 2017, and
Somewhere
it's not
around
even 4 years. And we're looking at, Don, you assessed the total of $63,000, $63,851. It doesn't say what you would be doing on Tampa Street. But my question is, I don't know who did the work. The water company obviously put the lines in, they paved it. But is there a warranty on this?
No, so
Because
let me,
I don't understand why we're shelling out $63,000 on something that's
Jay,
relatively new.
Jay, just.
Yeah.
There's no warranty. You gotta remember what they do. And sometimes it's great and sometimes it's not. So Tampa's base was no good to begin with, okay?
Okay.
So when they dug up Tampa and put those new lines in, their job was to overlay. And they just overlaid that road. So ultimately,
Okay.
you'll get 5 years out of it, and that's about it, right? So unless you get lucky and the base was good, and Tampa's base was never good. So it was like Beirut before Kent County Water went in there, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
And that's basically what happens. Now, just take, for instance, Church Street. That was done once in 2010-ish, 2008, 2010, by the former councilwoman in the ward. And we just had to do Church Street all over again. So it all depends on the quality of work, the amount of driving that goes on. Wakefield Street was done in 2000, somewhere in there. And, it has a lot of potholes now and it needs a lot of work. The one thing I want to say though, Don, is some of the thoroughfares that you said, New London Ave, New London, and you threw in Main Street. By no means, we should not be taking any town road bond money and doing state roads whatsoever. Any of those roads that are state roads should not be on town dime. I've reached out to Representative Norrie and Senator Burke, and because they've called me and they've asked me what the town needs, and I told them to focus on our state roads and our main roads that are state roads. So I think the state should be covering state roads and the town should not be covering those state roads.
Well, I agree with you, but there is a section of Maine that is town responsibility. It comes from A&J's restaurant up to the crossroads.
Yeah, but that is in rough shape. Does it need to be done is the question.
It's in pretty poor shape.
And again, I'm just speaking my piece. I know personally, Phoenix Ave is a thoroughfare too, very busy road, and it's horrendous. Hasn't been touched since probably the 70s. It's got a giant crown in it. Woodside Avenue. I know I looked at some of the things on here. On some of the, I saw my two roads on there, LeGrand and Montclair, and it says crack fill. I don't know who did this assessment, and you can't crack fill what's over here. You got sinkholes, you got, I bottom out when I pull in the road. So it's not I don't think it's a crack fill. So, as we go on, and I understand you had to put a rush on this list, but we want to make sure we're doing what we're supposed to be doing properly, because I'll be honest with you, if you come down LeGrand Street and crack fill, you just wasted money, because the old macadam sticking up through the asphalt.
I'll
It's
take a
just,
look at it.
and then coming down Montclair, I showed you 2 years ago when you first came here, and I know I showed Dave Picozzi also. There's a giant sinkhole that is totally, it's all wiped out, and you can't crack fill it. but that's what they have on the list. And I read it and I was like, oh boy. So that made me feel not confident of some of the notes. And again, I think most of us as council people know which roads we travel and which roads we get complaints about. And, like Councilwoman Williamson, like she said, there's $500,000 in CDBG money for the Tanglewood area. That could pretty much cover most of, if not a lot of that area based off your numbers. So that's great for her.
But those curbs need to be replaced too. If you go through there, those are horrendous, and that's part of what that happens.
And that's the next question I'm going to ask is, I know it's part of road bond. So for instance, let's talk about, Mary Beth, Phoenix Ave is both of ours. Do we
Right.
want to look at maybe sidewalking one side of it, in that road bond? Some of these sidewalks that when we go and put some curbing in, I know it adds extra expense, but if we do it right the first
No.
time.
And there's 100%. I'm glad you mentioned the sidewalks because there's a handful over in the Shippey Ave, West Street area. A few of the little, I'd have to look through exactly what the names are, but there's a few that when we did the Shippey Ave drainage project, they were concerned about, why we weren't doing their streets. So that's part of it. But also, as we move along, we never really know for sure when Kent County Water is going to come in too. So, I mean, even this list we have is still going to kind of be in pencil, right, Dave? I mean, if Kent County Water is going to come through a street, there's no reason for us to do it.
Hey, look, East Main Street and Bridge, that area over there, I know I begged and pleaded with DOT when they did the bridge and, emailed to the governor's office and a bunch of stuff went on and it got done. And less than 8 months later,
Yeah.
the gas company came in and dug it up. So
Yeah. So that, I mean, and it's, so that's what I mean. As far as like a long-term plan, we can have an idea of the streets we want done, but stuff's going to come up that is beyond our control that we have no control over, and they're going to come tear it up again. So, I mean, we can try to do our best and reach out to these other organizations and say, hey, are you planning on tearing this up in the next year? So we don't have to waste that money there and do a different street. But
I did get a list from Kent County Water, and if you look in the comments, you'll see Kent County Capital Water or Water Capital Project. So those roads won't go into the bond request.
how far in advance?
5 years is what I got.
Would you say 5 years?
5 years, yeah.
And how? And you would know more than I would. How often does their list change?
Well, clearly, if they have a water main break or they have a failure, it changes immediately. But I would think that they're pretty accurate because they're paying for the engineering to turn around and actually design the new water mains.
And just to give you a heads up, when Kent County Water does their infrastructure plan, they have to submit that to the PUC also. So,
Correct.
For instance, I have reached out, Renadette Street doesn't have more than a 2-inch water line on the entire street. When they dug up Renadette Street last time for the road bond, I reached out to Kent County Water, Bob Boyer, and Kent County, the old director of Kent County Water, and said, here's your opportunity right now to put the proper line down this street if you'd like to, and we'll pay for the paving. We just need you to put the water line in, because there's like 6 or 8 houses down there that are on wells, and they would actually probably tie into the water if it was available, or if they ever had an emergency, they had to tie in. They told me they could not do it because it's not before the PUC. So everything goes before the PUC for them.
All right. So for the most part, they stay pretty much to what the 5-year plan is for when they got the water. Okay.
They fall behind. They don't ever catch up. They always fall behind.
Yeah, that's how it works.
We also need to make sure that we pay attention to, we're talking about Phoenix Avenue. And Don, when I looked at the list, I see Phoenix Avenue Section 1. I'm not sure what Section 1 means. I don't see a Section 2. And I do know that it is split between Ward 1 and Ward 2. But we also know from, talking to the people at the sewer plant, there's work that needs to be done on a sewer line there. So we need to make sure that we've spoken with them too and coordinate that effort.
So Mary Beth, one of the reports they sent over, Section 1, was from Woodbine to Maine, which is actually all of Ward 2. And then he has a section 2 somewhere along. It was in the first list he had.
Yeah, see, this list, I printed the second one that we got this afternoon, and I might just be overlooking it, but I don't see it.
Yeah, and the first,
Here.
hold on, I got it on my first list. Hold on.
You're right, it's listed in section 2. Phoenix Avenue, section 1 is in Ward 2. And it's definitely, it's one that needs to be, reclaimed, and there's a $138,000 price tag on it, and it says Maine to Woodbine, you're right. But what about the rest of it?
And I think that's where your sewer line is, up on the upper half.
It is, I agree. And of course, that's not all West Warwick. At some point, it turns into Cranston as well.
Actually, yeah, it's Cranston, right, I can't think of the name of that road on the left, but that's where it
Yeah,
turns into Cranston.
Exactly right. Yes. So
tonight,
So,
are we just looking
is there a
at using
consensus
number?
about, is there a consensus about the $7 million if we believe we can afford it?
More the merrier.
I would agree.
I
What are the
agree.
consequences? What are the consequences if we don't use it all? Are there any?
Normally, I don't know what the time frame is. Kristen might be able to
So
elaborate.
the time frame for the last road bond was 5 years. So according to, by the IRS rules, it had to be spent or returned to debt service after 5 years.
I don't think you'll have a problem.
Yeah.
7
I was
million.
gonna say,
Well, no, I don't think so. So,
Well, but the thing is though, is like I waited to use mine because of Church Street. I wanted to do Church, but we put in for a grant for CDBG. We didn't get it the first time. And then I waited. I was going to use it on half of Coit Avenue. And at the time when I was trying to make that decision, I checked with the water company for a second time over a 2-year period. And yes, it's going to be redone. The first time I checked, it wasn't even in the plans. So I just think if, as long as we can use it, I mean, it's not wrong to hesitate, right? I mean, we have the 5 years.
no,
Right?
I don't, again, I just wanted to make sure there was no issue. I would say the $7 million is the number we should go with. And then we need to refine between now and next Monday, maybe, or you tell me, Mark, I guess, Mark and Kristen and Don. And who actually does the submission? Does that come from the town manager?
The submission for the RIB money,
Yes,
me.
comes from you.
So they have a new
Okay.
online platform called Enable.
Okay.
So I started the application yesterday, but
Okay.
I quickly got to a point where I needed the road priority list to upload. So I didn't have
Okay.
that. I needed to know fees for our bond counsel and financial advisor. So I reached out to them and got those. But it is in the process.
Okay, so I guess the question becomes what's the definition of the priority list and how specific does it need to be? And do we need to say yes, maintenance versus, I assume not, we're gonna say 7 and how we spend it is our business, sort of. As I said, I think that this list does a great job. If there's no prohibition, I mean, there are some streets that have no dollar amounts on them, and as Don said, Wakefield Street, we'd have to add that in. The 4 main thoroughfares that Don talked about.
I'm assuming if
Can we
Don,
get a number on those at some point soon?
Absolutely.
Because I think that drives everything. The 4 main, if those 4 roads are $1 million, or if they're 4 million, that's going to drive not where we begin, but where we stop.
I think when I was looking at it earlier, it was about $1.5 million to take care of the 4 major thoroughfares, but I'll get to verify that tomorrow. Again, understand, this came off the press at 3:00 today.
Yeah, I mean, I can, Wakefield Street, the biggest issue are potholes at manhole covers. That's the biggest issue for the most part. I also have a couple of cut-ins at hydrants, things like that, that have deteriorated, but I wouldn't say that that's a start to finish the whole thing has to be done. I wouldn't expect that to be the answer.
That might just be a grind and layover also, not a whole
Correct.
reclaim. Because the base of that,
Absolutely. It's
if I
solid.
remember, yeah, if I remember correctly, the state put that as a 6-inch asphalt base because of the trucking and whatever else.
That's correct.
So you might
Yes.
just be
So-
able to do a top coat.
So if we go for if we put in for 7 million, of that 7, how much do we have to decide how much we want to utilize for preventative maintenance?
No, I don't think so. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Outside of your priority list, I think you might have some questions if you put aside 6 million of it for preventative and only use 1 million for the bonds, because remember, you're selling it in an election on a ballot vote for the people to vote on. So if they're expecting $7 million worth of work and you don't use it, you might have some questions afterwards. But if there comes a point in time where you've completed, the preliminary, let's say it's six roads altogether, including the main 4 thoroughways, and you're left with, let's say, $800,000, you're going to have a much easier time converting that into preventative revenues for preventative work later on. I wouldn't suggest taking the bulk of that and trying to hold on to it for any particular reason other than fix your roads.
I think
So
maybe
do
the
we have
question
to
was
even
for the
mention-
filing. No, I don't think we have to break it out for the filing at all.
No.
It's $7 million we're asking for, and
Right.
we're going to use it for roads, whether it's a complete redo or it's a maintenance.
No, I'm talking about, you don't need to break it up into an overlay. Yes,
Right.
that's not required.
When I did this in Westerly, we did do a spreadsheet like you see in front of you. But we also did a spreadsheet for roads that were going to be crack sealed and chip sealed, et cetera. And that was all part of the package, and that got sent in, and they had no problem with it. And they were doing 15 million, 5 million, 3 years in a row.
Yeah, so as I said, I think this spreadsheet actually goes a long way to perhaps taking care of the priority list, although Wakefield Street and the 4 main thoroughfares that you talked about,
Need to be
the
looked at.
London Avenue, they would have to be looked at, yes. There are a couple, Don, that have blanks on them. Something like Lafayette Street has a blank. I'm not sure why. There aren't many, but there are a few. So I don't know. Summer Street, Astor Street.
We may have just missed it, but we'll take a look at them.
Well, it says Newer Road on Astor, but yeah.
So nothing then. It should have been a 0. I put
Okay.
0 in
And
my surveys where
so maybe it's suppressed. Maybe it doesn't print to 0. Yes. Okay, that's fine.
Right.
So, do we need to vote on the 7 million, or is it this is just a workshop and there's no vote taken?
No, you don't need a vote. I think the council has expressed its views and the manager has heard them. So, and so is the finance director. So they can start with can still work on the application. And if Don gets that information to them, that the application can be filed under the approved timeframe and move from there.
then what we would vote on at the same time that we vote on whatever our budget is, because it's gonna be on that ballot, right?
Nothing prevents you from having a public meeting to discuss the $7 million and how you're going to go about allocating those funds for particular roads. So people are going to have an idea if their road's going to get done. But you're not prevented from discussing this in a further public meeting.
Gotcha. But I mean, when we're gonna put it on, because it's gonna be a referendum. It's gonna be
That's right. That's part of the package of both your your fiscal year budget, and then whatever other referendum questions there are going to be. And this obviously would be a
But
driving one.
it'll be two separate, right? There'll be the budget and then there'll be this and whatever else we have, they'll be two separate.
But there'll also be the home rule charter proposed amendments if there are any. So you'd break it down into this is what the ballot's going to look like, and then you'd vote on those individually.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Can I make one more comment? You're gonna have to justify this with your voters. And one of the things that I would recommend you all do is just Google the cost of driving on bad roads. And you will get reports all over the place. And they basically tell you that driving on a rough road costs every driver, every vehicle, $600 to $1,600 a year. That may be something that you can say, your taxes may go up by $10 a year, but your cost of maintaining your vehicle is $600. We're actually trying to help you out.
All right, any other questions from the council?
I want to say thank you to Don, though. Thank you. Putting that list.
Thank you, Don and Kristen and Mark
Yeah.
for doing it. Kristen, so when do we hear back about from the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank?
Not sure how long the process takes. If I remember correctly, it does take some time before they award the pool, but I'm going to call someone there tomorrow to make sure that we're following all the right steps. There's some questions I have on the application, so I'll ask when I call tomorrow.
And then I guess my question would be, if for some reason that doesn't work and it's not approved, what happens then? And what's our fallback position?
We go to a general obligation bond.
And do we have to run a parallel path? My question being, if Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank doesn't get back to us in time, we don't want to miss the May voting. And I do know there is an option that because it's under the 3% that we can indeed go ahead anyway.
I don't think we have to have our financing set to put it out to the voters.
Okay.
We can make that decision as the year goes on.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, no.
So the referendum does not have to say where the money's coming from,
No.
whether
And
it's
you
a
don't-
general
I mean,
obligation or,
Per
and it might be a
charter, you
split.
don't have to go out to vote at all. So you're doing that so you can be transparent, so the voters and the constituents know what's going
Correct.
on. So you're taking that extra step. But yeah,
correct.
we'll be doing that concurrently.
Well, I think that's
Okay.
important to let everybody know too, that we're taking a step beyond that we don't have to even take to do that.
That's correct.
Yeah, well, but I think that is important, for people to realize that, that we're trying to go above and beyond and take a step. I think that is a huge selling point to them to let them know. And every ward has their streets that are gonna need to get done. So I think that I hope people will be in favor of it.
All right, if there's no other questions,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Good night.
Thank
You guys-
you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hey, Kristen,